webinar as soon as we have a good number. Thank you for being patient, and while we wait for a few more attendees, please enjoy this video. Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you on behalf of Moritech. Hope all of you and your loved ones are safe and healthy in these uncertain times. Established in the year 2005, Moritech has evolved into a trusted global enterprise solutions provider to its customers, including several Fortune 500 companies. As a lead innovator of next-gen AI solutions, we bring AuraSuite.ai to the forefront to help businesses excel in their digital transformation journey. Hi, I'm Ishitwa, and I will be moderating the session as we look at gaining insight into inventory optimization from an artificial intelligence standpoint. The webinar will focus on how AI can be leveraged to reduce inventory risks and costs in supply chain, and also its use in day-to-day decisions. As this webinar, we will be conducting some quick polls. We request your 100% participation. The question and answer section would be towards the end of the webinar. The attendees are requested to post their queries in the Q&A box. So before I introduce our speakers, let's have the first poll question, please. On your screen, you can see a question with multiple answers. Choose the best answer that fits. I see a very low participation. Everyone is give their answers. Last 15 seconds to go. Oh, good number. Today, we have the industry leaders joining us from oil and gas and health sector. First, I would like to introduce Jim Crenshaw, partner and GM of engineering from Metis Energy. Jim has extensive global experience in implementing technology solutions in the oil and gas service industry. He has broad international experience on operations, technology implementations, M&A integration within oil and gas. He will take us through the importance of oil and gas. Jim, could you share a few words with our attendees from oil and gas perspective, please?
Jim, you're on mute.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Ishitwa. My name is Jim Crenshaw, and I've had the honor and privilege of working globally with the oil and gas industry for more years than I like to say. But you know, the oil and gas industry is very diverse globally. We're utilizing components and materials that are produced and obtained from almost every corner of the globe. And recently, we've had twin effects of historic low prices in commodity for oil and gas, as well as the COVID-19. It's really forced us to step back and understand how can we develop more robust sourcing techniques, and how can we offset the significant disruptions that we've seen in our industry. And bringing in AI, and my colleague Pavan will go into greater detail on application, but bringing in AI, we've seen dramatic improvements to our financials, both from a cost reduction perspective as well as revenue generation, allowing us to understand how to properly map our supplier network, understanding not only our tier 1 suppliers, but our tier 2 and tier 3 supplier relationships. It really helps us understand how we can optimize our global oil and gas projects. We're so dependent on on-time deliveries and product prices being under control that supply chain management and optimization is absolutely critical. So with AI, we're seeing more nimbleness, more responsiveness, quicker solution sets being identified. I think you'll really enjoy the presentation to see how we are bringing this down to the ground level in our various industries. So I don't want to cut into your time, Pavan. Ishitwa, I'd like to hand this back to you to introduce our next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim, for the kind words. Moving on to our next speaker for today's session, Vivek Jadhav. He's the Vice President, Business Excellence at Becton Dickinson. Thank you for joining the call, Vivek. I understand Pavan and you worked together many years ago. It is our pleasure to have you as a speaker today. So Vivek has over 25 years of experience, primarily as a leader of supply chain across various organizations. At Becton Dickinson, he oversees performance of all business processes, process governance, and is using AI to promote business process excellence. So Vivek, would you like to say a few words to our attendees from life sciences perspective?
First of all, thank you, Ishitwa, for those kind words. And, Pavan, it feels great to be on the same forum as you after, I'm guessing it's 15 years or so that we work together in BD, and feels great to be on the same podium as you. So I would like to echo a similar sentiment expressed by my friend and colleague, Jim, on the call today. He expressed, the things happening in the oil and gas and how AI is relevant for the oil and gas industry, no different in the life sciences space, but I would like to call out some, subtle differences. So compared to the oil and gas industry, this COVID disruption has been a wake-up call for life sciences or the healthcare industry as well. But the main difference that I see is when there is a disruption in the healthcare supply chain, you've got to remember there's a patient at the end of the healthcare supply chain. So your ability or inability to get things right could mean human life, and that is precious. The other observation, we in the healthcare space tend to move a little bit slowly. It is a highly regulated space that we operate in. And because we are dealing with human life, there is regulations that govern the industry and also the pace at which we progress. However, what we have seen in this disruption, the COVID era, we have seen EUA approvals for diagnostic solutions getting approved in 10x faster speed. We've seen the vaccines roll out at 10x faster speed. This has been unprecedented. So what we are seeing right now in the healthcare and the life sciences space is AI process innovation has tremendous appetite in this industry. Finally, the point in closing I would like to make is this COVID-19 crisis has unfortunately, on one hand, wiped off several companies that were, I would say, a little behind or not prepared for this disruption. But on the other hand, it has proved to be a blessing in the form of once in a lifetime opportunities for companies who have been on the forefront. So I feel and I strongly believe that adoption of technology, especially AI technology, puts you in the forefront, gets you that leapfrog effect to stay ahead of competition. And my friend and colleague, Pawan, will showcase in a matter of minutes, how they're bringing this to life through their technology solutions. So with that, back to you, Ishitwa.
Thank you, Vivek, for your insights. We'll get to more details on it. With this, I hand over the session to our presenter, Pawan Bankadaru, Vice President, AI Innovations at Moritech. He specializes in embedding artificial intelligence into enterprise business processes and architects AI capabilities into business user roles across supply chain and customer service to enable intelligent decision making. So with this, I give you the presentation. Over to you, Pawan.
Thank you, Ishitwa, and good morning, good evening, everybody. Really welcome you to this, presentation. I thank you, Vivek and Jim, for taking the time from your busy schedules to join us in this conversation. It's an honor to actually share the stage with you and interact with you as part of this important topic on AI-powered inventory optimization. As part of this webinar, what we plan to showcase is sort of the broad context of why inventory optimization is needed, what exactly is inventory optimization, give you an idea of an example as to how this can be applied in solving some day-to-day problems, and close it out with a conversation with our panel members to see how this may be relevant for their businesses and get their views. And after that, we will take some question and answers from the audience. During the last 18 months, all of us have witnessed some sort of pain due to not having the correct inventory, correct material at the right time, and so forth, right? This has been caused by various supply chain disruptions. Vivek has cited already. It could be COVID, it could be coming from the freeze in Texas, if it's possibly Suez Canal or the global ship shortages, and it goes on and on. There's so many external events that have caused supply chain disruptions. Added to that, there's a whole host of other factors such as digitalization, automation, and changing customer preferences. All of these have massively shaken the supply chain and across the industry and upset the demand and supply scenarios. As a result, each of us in various capacities, either us or our own personal family members, have experienced the pain of shortage, whether it's a PPE shortage, not finding the right food on the grocery store, not having the papers, and in some industries, critical industries such as the food industry, people started falling sick. There was not enough food that was actually being made. So there was a lot of pain that we experienced during the starting phase of the COVID, and it still continues to today, right? India is experiencing massive oxygen shortages, but in between, there were many other shortages. The Texas freeze caused a lot of labor issues, and the global chip shortages. Actually, it has caused major disruption to the auto industry. Many factories in the United States have actually shut down because they couldn't get a $5 chip from a tier 2 supplier, right? So the freight costs have substantially increased during the last 6 months, and that has actually created massive problems. Whether it is a food sector, whether it is a housing sector, anywhere you go, I think there is no shortage of shortages today. In the global economy, very specifically the United States. The inspiration for this webinar is to share our experiences on how we are actually leveraging AI as one of the tools to really mitigate the disruption pain caused by many of these events. We have learned quite a bit in this last 18 months. In collaborating with our customers, we've been able to develop some very specific, helpful AI-based technologies and tools that are actually helping our customers which is what we are trying to showcase in this webinar, specifically from an inventory standpoint. Here is a quick snapshot of what the executives are telling us. We are in a rising inflationary environment, whether it is the food, whether it is metal, whether it is housing, prices are rising everywhere. So businesses today, they're having a massive pressure on margin because of the input prices increase. What's on the executive's mind today is how to unlock corporate capital in the next 2 quarters. Otherwise, margins and profit margins will come down and all the subsequent effects, right? So they're really trying to figure out how to unlock capital. And the other thing that the executives are telling us is, okay, how do we have better capability to respond to disruptions, whether it is an external disruption or maybe an industry disruption? That is what the executives are telling us. We need to have a better response system to be able to cope with the disruptions that are occurring. What we have seen in talking to executives and working with industry over the last 18 months specifically is to understand where the gaps are in the traditional supply chain systems. And we summarize them as 4 very specific gaps. The first gap being not being able to have visibility to external factors that are impacting the business. Whether it is a macroeconomic factor or it's a very specific industry factor. For example, it could be purchasing power, unemployment, or it could be the rising lumber prices or a tier 2 supplier, something like that. So these are the external factors, even if it is tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, today, those factors are really, really starting to impact a business, and not having that visibility is having a problem. The models that we are using to do really forecasting or planning, they are coming out to be suboptimal, right? Or they are not just working to really capture the current dynamics of demand and supply. The current systems, the planning organizations typically want to do really simulation. What happens if this increases or that decreases, right? So that type of disruptive simulation capability is just not there. And the traditional systems, whether it's an ERP system or a supply chain planning system, the data model that's lying underneath is deemed to be very inflexible. You just can't change that model that easily in view of the various factors that exist today. At Mauritech, what we have done is to really figure out how do we bridge this gap with an innovative way. And we have leveraged AI to bring about filling these gaps. We've introduced Aura Control Tower, which is a capability powered by AI to address some of the specific problems in supply chain and make the supply chain as an intelligent supply chain. The Aura Control Tower has 3 layers. The first layer has the capability to sense and provide better visibility of the external factors that impact your business. It has a second layer that helps you to process that data, helps you to do simulations and predict if you're going to run out of some materials, predict stock out and so forth. And the third layer, it's the response system. It gives you a very specific capability to say whether you have to go left or right or straight. It's a very prescriptive answer the optimization layer provides. In today's webinar, our focus is on the optimization layer, because this is a layer that helps to really provide the capability to respond to various disruptions, be it internal or external. Let's dive down a little bit deeper about this optimization capability and layer. Optimization is a very generic word used in many business conversation, but in this context, it has a very specific meaning. The optimization here refers to a specific mathematical model that helps you to really get very decisive answers in terms of what exactly you need to One second, let me see if I can share the screen in a better way. So Vandana, you're seeing a split screen or a full screen?
It's not full screen.
We're seeing a split screen.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so are you seeing a full screen now?
Yeah.
perfect.
Okay, so thank you very much. Okay, so so what I was trying to say is the optimization is a loosely used word. I want to bring a better context. So it is in the context of prescriptive analytics that we are presenting optimization today. It gives you specific answer as to what is the best way to really make a decision. Today, the penetration for prescriptive analytics is around 1 to 5%. There is a lot of conversation about predictive, but from a prescriptive analytics standpoint, the penetration is low. From a Mauritech standpoint, we have done a lot of prescriptive analytics projects, specifically using optimization, and the ROI has been at least 6 to 12 months. So let's go into the next level of detail in terms of how optimization can help complex decisions on a daily basis. Here is what you're seeing, a typical supply chain network, wherein you have a model that shows how materials move from factories to a centralized warehouse to a regional warehouse to customers. In that process, everyday supply chain teams and logistics teams, they have to make lots and lots of decisions. And a lot of these decisions today are made by, partly tribal knowledge, partly assisted with, systems knowledge. But it's not a very prescriptive way, and a lot of times decisions are suboptimal. Let's view a couple of examples. If you have 2 production lines, a lot of times you have to choose which production line you want to really use. You could have multiple modes of transport. As you know, transportation costs have increased substantially in the last 6 months. Which particular mode of transportation do you use? When do you switch the transportation modes? You may have multiple warehouses. Where exactly do you want to store your material so that the material can reach to the customers fastest without compromising on the service levels? If you have a fleet of trucks, what's the optimal route that you want to use? So all of these decisions, they actually have a cost, right? And that is what is the total supply chain cost is going to look like, right? Production cost, freight cost, storage cost, and stock hold cost. None of these are insignificant. In some of the businesses, what we have seen is freight is contributing to at least 50% of the distribution or the total supply chain costs. And it varies from industry to industry. Here is a quick example of what a complex or a moderately complex scenario could look like. If you have 50 products and 5 factories that you're trying to send it to customers, let's say 100 customers, you typically have about 2.25 million combinations of how you can send the products from the factories to the customers. So what keeps the executives at night is how to reduce the overall cost of the supply chain, how to ensure all of the constraints are met, yet maintaining all the service levels. What happens if a certain warehouse shuts down? This happened, in the Texas freeze. A lot of warehouses in the southern coast of the United States shut down, and companies were struggling. How do you reroute the products? So this is what is the supply chain looks like on a daily basis in terms of operational decisions. Now let's look at very quickly how exactly the optimization works and how it is different. What you're seeing here on the left side is the human mind and also the traditional systems as to how they're programmed. If you have 2 production lines, and you have different ways of making a certain product, and all of the branches that you see are the different ways of making the product. And hypothetically, we have put some numbers which shows the profit per order, right? Obviously, you want to maximize your profit. And what this hypothetical example is showing is that in line 1, if you choose this, this is the best feasible option. You're not choosing 100 because 80 is the only feasible option, 100 is probably not feasible. So again, this is a hypothetical scenario. Now, what's to be taken away here is this particular heuristic approach, it's not paid attention to this line 2 on all of these combinations. And this is where the optimization model is hugely different and making a huge impact for customers. The optimization model takes into account all of the combinations that are possible, and it looks at the feasibility as well as minimizing the cost or maximizing profits. Therefore, it gives you the best option and helps you to really unlock that capital that may be really hiding in your supply chain. So this is what the optimization model really helps you to do. In the previous example, where we had 2.25 million combinations, it's extremely impossible to really figure out what's the best path. And that is where optimization brings the power of finding out which is the feasible route, which is the least cost, which increases your profitability. So to summarize, the optimization model takes into account a variety of your data, variety of constraints, multiple factors. It constructs a certain mathematical optimization model, which has an objective function to really either maximize your profits or minimize your costs. You can state it either way. And it helps you to really get a very prescriptive answer in terms of where you should send the product from, how much you should stock, and what route you should use, and so forth. And it helps you to really have a very good simulation capability so that if something changes in your supply chain, you can quickly understand what is plan B and plan C and so forth. So let's actually quickly see with a demo on how this can actually work. Give me one moment while I change my screens. Let me quickly refresh. So what I'm going to try to demonstrate to you is a model that helps you to really figure out what happens when one of your warehouses shut down, right? So let's go through a warehouse shutdown scenario. So this is something that we have seen being quite effectively used in a lot of scenarios, such as the Texas freeze, as I was talking about. The warehouses in the southern part of the United States were shut down. And the clients where we use this model, they had to really figure out what is the next best port to ship their products from, either to South America or Asia and so forth. And we saw that the decisions that the supply chain managers made without the tool versus with the tool were significantly different. And there was a huge appreciation by the customer in terms of what this tool is actually providing as an insight so that they can make an intelligent decision on what is the next best port to ship the product from. Here's a hypothetical example that I'm kind of showcasing here. What you're seeing as dots, the dots are representative of customers, and the triangles are representative of warehouses. In this particular example, what we are trying to do is making sure we minimize the cost of shipping the products to all of these customers and trying to really figure out how to make sure we have a very good response system just in case if any of the customers, any of the warehouses shut down, right? So let's see in the base model, I'll try not to change many of these parameters. I'm going to hit the solve button. And what it's actually doing is it runs a very powerful algorithm in the background. And for the sake of this conversation, I would kind of quickly flash what that algorithm looks is. It's a mixed integer program optimization model. And this is what is actually being processed when I hit the solve button. It's kind of computing all the various combinations, right? We had an example of 2 million combinations. So very quickly, it's using this model to really calculate the cost by paying attention to the capacity of the warehouses. It looks at the balances of inventory coming in and out, make sure all the demands are met. It does all of these computations very quickly, and it kind of figures out, okay, based on all of the needs, this is the best case scenario to meet the demand. It identifies the center of gravity, and it says, if you ship from these warehouses, all of these customer demands can be met within a certain service level. Now, you could have a situation where you increase the number of warehouses, because after the freeze, some of the warehouses came back, and you want to figure where exactly you can ship the products from, and you're running this computation again, and it's literally within minutes, and sometimes a few minutes, it gives you the answer based on a very scientific calculation in terms of saying, okay, where exactly you need to ship the product from once certain warehouses come back. Sometimes the results are quite, telling, because this is what is not visible to the human eye, right? The human eye cannot comprehend all the combinations that are out there possible. Let's go through another simple disruption simulation. So, which is in terms of your fleet changes. So let's take a hypothetical example where you have a certain number of customers and you have just one vehicle trying to service all of their customers. So the optimization model has figured out, right, what is the path, and it's also given us what's the cost to really service these customers. Now, if I had additional vehicles, the model quickly gives you what exactly is the best path for each of these two vehicles and what the optimal route is, right? And by following this, logistics teams are able to really figure out, okay, how to plan when drivers fall sick. What happens if I increase the number of customers with two vehicles? How exactly should my route look like? What does the last mile look like? So these are the operational decisions that customers are actually able to use for day-to-day decision making with optimization capability. So with that, I will go back to our presentation, and I would like to let me see if this algorithm is computed. Sometimes it takes a minute because it has a complex algorithm behind. It's computing all the various combinations. So that's kind of gives you a really quick flavor of what is possible with optimization. I'd like to stop the conversation, or at least pause the conversation here, and I will hand the conversation to Vivek and Jim, asking for their inputs and thoughts on what you have seen so far in terms of what has been described and what's possible with some of those optimization techniques and algorithms, and see how it may be relevant for your industry, something like this. So Vivek, you want to maybe start there?
Oh, thank you, Pawan. From just my initial reaction, and I had not gotten the opportunity to see this beforehand. So this is very impressive what you're doing in the AI space. So I want to, first of all, kudos to you and your team for going down this path. And in terms of application, absolutely. there is application. Who would doubt that statement? We see a lot of application in a couple of areas within the healthcare supply chain, especially in the demand sensing front. We were caught a little bit by, not a little bit, a lot by surprise when the COVID pandemic broke through, and that is expected. But as we actually, lived the COVID crisis for several months, I would argue, if we had, strong demand sensing capability within the healthcare sector, we could have responded far better. So there is definitely an opportunity for demand sensing. Inventory optimization, what you showed, my eyes lit up as you were walking through the model. I could easily see, there's a lot of cost. There's a lot of not just latent cost, obvious, to our eyes. There's a lot of cost in the supply chain. The healthcare market is continuously under that cost pressure, and any opportunity to utilize technology to optimize costs using AI, the opportunity is right. Route optimization that you also showed is a topic of interest. Um, there's this particular, I don't know if it's a term in the industry, but I call it like the enterprise AI. So there's a lot of data within the four walls of the company, and putting that data or converting that data into insights that are actionable and that can drive business outcome. That's another opportunity that I see, be it lead time optimization or any of the problem solving techniques. So to answer your question, Pawan, very thrilled and excited to see what you presented. And I dream of a day that we absorb that and we embed that into our processes to drive business impact in the healthcare space. I would also be curious to assess what Jim's reaction to the demo was.
Yes, thank you, Vivek. I mean, my wheels are turning when I see a demonstration like this. And I'd like to give a specific example of how the AI optimization would dramatically impact our cost structure. All the time we're asked, what is the impact of AI? We've seen dramatic improvements in cost reductions as well as improvements in our revenue generation. But give you an example, so many of our rigs, be it offshore or onshore, are in remote areas. To give you an example, offshore, our rig running rate or cost daily is about $1.5 million per day. If we can save an hour on a critical part, it's a dramatic impact to our costs. So do we utilize a high cost helicopter to go out to the rig, or can we utilize a slower marine vessel? Do we have disruptions getting product to the port to be brought out to these offshore locations? So there's so many different variables that drive cost. This is a dramatic tool that can quickly help us assess the right approach to minimizing. And it gives you that real-time feedback. You can have weather-related incidents as well that come up. So AI has that ability to bring in all the disparate data and connect it to give you the full system picture of what's the right optimization. I'd even go so far as to say that you could be seeing disruptions to competitors. And seeing those disruptions, it gives you that opportunity to be preemptive, perhaps open up a new market, a new customer base by being there with supply when their normal supplier channels are failing. Again, AI gives you that insight into the systemic efficiencies and allowing you to make those decisions. So it's fascinating to see where we've come from the days of Excel and PowerPoint, trying to understand the right ways to optimize globally. But this is truly a cost savings, driving in dramatic efficiencies, which help our businesses stay in business.
Oh, fantastic, Jim. That's a great response. One thing I just want to follow up on some of your earlier comments, Jim, where you talked about tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers, the impact from them, right? Could you further elaborate on that in terms of
Yes.
how you can see, the help of AI in terms of visibility, and tie that to, sort of a cost saving aspect of it.
Yes, so many of our products that we utilize, I'll take something as simple as a downhole tool assembly. Because of our global presence, we like to set up operations and factories in different countries. It's part of that internal development of the country. We had large operations in Venezuela at one time. And with the nationalizations that occurred, the restrictions on import and export that occurred, many of our critical components that were made in that one plant were no longer available. So it had a dramatic impact on our cost and availability for one of our very key components in a simple downhole completion tool string. But we see the same on raw materials. We utilize a lot of specialty metals in our high temperature, high pressure environment that we operate in, and those metals typically have very long lead times. So understanding where is that material mined? How is it transported to a tier 2 that makes the first component? How is that brought to another shop in the United States where we make a final assembly in our tier 1 plant? And understanding those relationships, understanding what the options are, and having a tier 3 supply in a separate country or a separate region of the world that isn't impacted by geopolitics or weather-related issues, or in this last year, COVID. We need to understand where those options are to properly map out a more robust supply chain. The end result is dramatic inefficiencies in our project economics.
Sure. No, thank you very much, Jim. So Vivek, any other thoughts from your standpoint from a life sciences perspective? Where do you really see maybe in the next couple of quarters, right? Short-term perspective, the relevance of these tools, in terms of how you could use and where you see the relevance of these tools specifically.
Yeah, so in terms of relevance, all of the reasons that Jim nicely articulated, they make a powerful case for AI. But I will also want to chime in kind of a word of caution, or maybe things to watch out for, right? The technology is very exciting. It has a lot of application, but not done correctly. There is also, what I'm seeing in the industry is also this not able to prove the value. So a couple of things that I would like to point out is the infrastructure and the strategy around infrastructure is very, very important. So you have to, put some pre-work into thinking about the infrastructure to support AI. If you have not built that ecosystem, and when I say infrastructure, it's not just hardware and cloud, it is also the vendor ecosystem. Can you do all this organically, or do you need to have some inorganic partnerships with the startup vendors who have this innovation mindset? So that ecosystem is very very critical in my mind, because if you don't get that right and you jump into these programs, you may not see the ROI that you are expecting to see. The other piece I would also say is from a process perspective, being able to embed the AI technology into your day-to-day processes would be nirvana. Not a lot of companies have been able to do that. I would say, the AI capability still sits on the side. The approach that's being taken by many players in this market space is, hey, give me your data, or give me access to the data lakes. I will do the AI capability and draw the insights, and then you can run with the insights and utilize that to drive impact. What happens is, if it's not embedded into your processes, into your systems that drive your business, that run your day-to-day process, then the impact, your ability to drive that impact is constrained. So that's the other piece that folks need to keep in mind. I am absolutely a big proponent of the relevance of AI and the relevance of AI to drive business impact, but not done correctly or in the wrong hands, it could be a disappointment.
Great. So thank you very much, Vivek. So with that, we will quickly, go into the concluding thoughts of this presentation, and we'll turn it back into the QA part. So we talked about the control tower, its capability, went through a demo, and we focused mostly on the supply chain side of things. But I do want to share with the audience, optimization is a much broader space. While you have supply chain problems as one side that you can deal with, from an optimization perspective to give very prescriptive answers, there are other problems that optimization can help you to solve. Having a workforce/labor optimization, how much daily labor, hourly labor we need to have versus the permanent labor, right? So that's a question that a lot of companies are trying to really figure out with optimization. How do you really improve the manufacturing yield? That's a problem that steel companies are actually using, right? By having the right kind of raw materials ingested into the oven, they're getting the best yield. Marketing, trade promotion, right? So you spend a lot of money on promoting and marketing products. How do you really optimize your marketing dollars, right? So optimization can help you to really figure out maximize the benefit of your marketing dollars. So I want to, on that note, conclude the presentation stating that optimization can be used as a powerful tool. The ROI is pretty high. I think, once you have a right use case, I think you should, do a quick POC and proof of value. And, Mauritech will be glad to assist you in that front. You can reach out to our marketing and sales teams on, how to really jumpstart any opportunities that you have. And, there are some complimentary assessments that we are providing, for the webinar attendees. So it's a very important time, to embark on this journey. And there are some really proven value in some of these models. They've already been tried, tested, and proven at many customers. And the ROI is something, can be taken advantage of to unlock capital. With that, I will yield back the floor to Ishitwa to go ahead and look at some of the Q&A side of things. Take care of the questions, please. Ishitwa, I think you're on mute. Hello.
Sorry, I was booted out somehow.
Okay, so yes.
Thanks.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're back on. Go ahead, Ishitwa.
Okay, great. Thank you, Pawan, for those valuable insights on how companies are transitioning to AI for better inventory management and demand planning. I'm sure the attendees have gained more insight and a bigger picture of inventory optimization from your presentation. I know that today's topic may bring up a lot of questions. Please post your questions for the panelists, and we will address as many as we can towards the end of the session. Now, going forward, let's have the remaining poll questions before heading towards the Q&A section. Attendees, please try to choose the answer that fits best. You have 25 seconds. So I see 50% participation. Last 10 seconds to go. That's increasing. And okay, so let's have the last poll, please. The last 20 seconds. We'd appreciate, the 100% participation from your end. Last 5 seconds. Okay. Thank you for your participation and sharing your opinions with us. Without any further delay, we can get into the Q&A. So, Pawan, we have a question for you. At first, I would like to address. The question is from Daniel. So the question is, the example given by you, does it consider geographical locations?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So the next question that we have, keeping time in mind. So Pawan, we already have ERP and planning system optimization in place. How is this approach more different than?
No, that's a very good question, right? So because a lot of companies have, some sort of planning system, and there is an attempt to really do optimal, points and so forth, right? The problem is, as I was stating, right, in the presentation, today's systems they have a certain data model, and they don't consider all the combinations of constraints and variables that occur and that are continuously evolving on a daily basis. So the optimization model that we are presenting, this is an open source type of a model. It comes with a lot of flexibility where you can actually model a lot of these constraints that really impact your business. And therefore, you are not married to the, what do you call, rigid data model that is resident in a typical ERP system or a planning system. So therefore, these optimization models, they give you a lot more power. They reside in the cloud and they have infinite compute power. And you saw that, about 2 to 3 million combinations, literally, they were processed in like a minute or so, right? So those kinds of performance and capabilities you simply just cannot get in a traditional planning system. So that is where these models excel. What we have seen is these models are sitting on top of the current planning systems, and that is becoming a very good augmentation to the entire planning system.
Okay, thank you for the insightful answer. So I have another question, keeping the time constraint in mind. This is for Jim. Oil and gas are in dire straits now. So will this technology take away jobs? What do you think?
Great question. We get that a lot with AI implementation, but honestly, ask yourself, why are jobs lost in the industry? And it's really a failure of financial performance. So any technology that's going to help you optimize your cost structure and help develop additional revenue streams will help protect jobs, not take them away. We've got so many use cases where AI is allowing us optimization of cost. The tasks still need to be done. We're just simply making smarter decisions, which protect the bottom line and protect our employee base. So absolutely, AI is going to be driving the industry forward and promoting work and jobs.
That's good to hear, Jim. So, keeping the time in mind, we are almost at the top of the hour. So I have one last question for Vivek. So what do you think are the biggest barriers to these type of technologies in healthcare industry?
Yeah, the biggest barriers is what I had actually articulated, just in my last reaction to one of the questions. Doing this in an unstructured manner has created some, what do you call the, failures in implementation, and that has created some vibe, and people are cautious. So I guess my 2 cents in this area would be, if you implement it with a good pre-work, good thought process, the right vendor, the right structure, and the right expectations, this can be, you could see the return on your time, on your investment in 120 days, 90 to 120 days is absolutely possible. So, it's both the barrier as well as an opportunity.
Okay. So thank you, Vivek. So with this, I think we are on top of the hour, and I would like to, give back the time to our attendees and also our speakers. Thank you, Jim, Vivek, and Pawan for those insightful answers, which have shed light on a lot of queries asked by our attendees. We are getting more questions, and I think we have tried to answer maximum questions, but you can still reach us out at inquiry@moritech.com for further queries. You will find our LinkedIn page in the chat box. Follow the page to stay updated with the latest innovations and market trends. So thank you so much for giving us your time and attending today's session. We shall respond to the remaining questions that are there within 2 to 3 working days. And thank you again, and have a great day and evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.